Have you ever wondered if every man has to hit rock bottom to truly change and want to become a better man, husband, and father? Or can a man change without needing to hit rock bottom? It's a great question to explore and one we're going to dive into on this episode. What's going on? Welcome to Alpha Dad Consulting. I'm your host, G. Vidal. And on this show, we bring you tactics, strategies, and conversations with incredible men to empower you as a dad to become the family leader your wife and kids want to follow. On this episode, I got a chance to interview John Shibley. John is the host of the Last in Line Leadership podcast, where he equips men to serve, encourage, and lead with courage and resilience. He's published over 350 episodes and has interviewed some of the best men on the planet around the topic of being an effective leader. Join us as we dive in on topics ranging from finding your purpose as a man to discussing what makes a good family leader. You're not going to want to miss this. Let's go.
I can see the enemy approaching the battleground. Hear the drums pound like a thunder sound loud. I gather up my crowd to prepare them for what's coming. We've been summoned.
All right, Mr. John Shibley. Really want to welcome you to the show, sir. It's an honor, it's a privilege to be able to have you here. And got to meet you through the Apogee Strong, coming on with the young men, introduced, via Matt and all that. So, man, it's just an honor to have you here, brother.
Thank you for reaching out. Thank you to Matt for connecting us. Always good to meet another Texan, and always good to meet another dude that's on fire to do the right things and serve people.
Thank you, brother. Yeah, and I'm glad you called me a Texan because I'm not officially one. I was born and raised in California, which is something that I don't like to proclaim when I get out, when I got out here. I'm one of those refugees that came out here, man, during the entire COVID crazy.
Hey, you're a Texan to me because I'm originally from Oklahoma and then went to New Orleans for 5 years and then moved here, and I've been here 16 years. So, man, if you defected from California, you're a Texan. We welcome you with open arms, brother.
Appreciate that, brother. Yeah, that means a lot, man. Yeah, I can't tell you how fast we changed those license plates once we got here. Yeah, sure. People gave us some dirty looks. I remember going on a walk. This was a couple months ago. Elderly couple that lives around in the neighborhood saw us walking by and saw me walk. Hey, I haven't seen you around here. Shook his hand. Right, I think his name was Jim. And yeah, he literally, where you all from? Right, that's what he said. And I was like, oh, we're originally from California. And he's like, oh, well, I hope you moved out here for all the right reasons. He just gives me that look, you know what I mean? And I'm like, yes, sir, we did. Right away. So
Texans Texans won't hesitate to let you know where they stand.
No, sir. No, they won't. But I love that, man. I love that. Yeah. I love that transparency here. All right, brother. Well, I want to get into the mission that you're on right now currently, because one of the things that I saw, I love this quote that you have on your Instagram bio, where you say that your mission right now is to inspire and equip men to lead their families, to inspire and equip men to lead their families on and purposefully pursue their mission. Right. And I wanted to get your take as to why did you decide to take on this mission? Right.
Man, I think, first of all, I think we can't have too many guys on a similar mission. And I guess the more I read of the Bible, and I don't know where a lot of your audience stands, but I'm a man of faith, Christian worldview, follower of Jesus. And the more I read of that, the more I start to understand that, look, Jesus wasn't passive. He wasn't weak. He wasn't apathetic. He was really kind of rugged and strong and courageous and bold. And so I was thinking, maybe I should be a little more like that. And not that I'll ever get there, but I sort of changed, because before I was a little bit more just head down, raise a family, take care of wife and kids, and 9 to 5, punch a clock, make a check, and feed everybody. That was kind of my thing. But then I realized, like, we're created for more than that, and not just to sort of survive, but to thrive through with our gifts, how we serve, how we show up. And so when you put the word mission on it, it just magnifies the purpose a little more. Like it elevates how you think about yourself when you realize you are on a mission, and you are living for a purpose, on purpose. So if we have more guys that realize that we have this purpose and it is a mission to lead and to serve with the tools we've been given, once we get into that, like we realize we can be on purpose because look, it's not going to come to us. No one's going to do it for us. And if not us, then who? And so I figure I just step in with I always say, do my portion with my portion. And so whatever I've got that's mine, I want to do my spot, do my part, play my role, contribute. And that's what I feel like this writing, podcasting, doing that is just kind of a way to use what I've been given to do that.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. Yeah, no, I couldn't agree with you more, brother. I'm on that same thing, and I'm curious as to what was sort of the catalyst for you that that defining moment where you were like, all right, this is where I need to be. This is what I need to do. I know Jesus is an inspiration, and likewise, brother, I'm a believer as well.
Yeah.
So I'm right there with you. I think that the perception that they have of Christ and him being this weak man,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like the turn the other cheek type of thing. There's more to unpack there in terms of the valor that he actually has, right? It's different. And when you start reading the parables or reading between the lines in the Gospels and all that, like he's a bold guy. This is a brave man walking around. You know what I mean? So, but I'm interested in hearing your story in terms of the catalyst that sort of set this all off for you.
Man, it'd be good if I could say it was like the moment that I got saved and became a believer. Like that'd be great. That'd be the perfect answer. But literally, I mean, I guess so. February, I'd been a believer for 20 years in February, and literally the first 15 or so, I was doing the thing I thought I was supposed to be doing, checking boxes, being the good Christian guy and trying to shore up some of my loose ends, right? And but then I think when COVID happened and we got stuck at home, I tried to do something with that time. And I realized I needed some alone time because we had a pretty full house. I've got 4 kids, and we had my son's future fiance, now wife, living with us at the time as well. And so we had everybody in a house. And so I had to get up literally around 5:30 and just have some time to myself. And man, I don't know. I think God was just revealing to me ways, because he's always revealed to me that there was something more, that I had a purpose, like there was a mission to be had and to take charge of. But I think he started revealing to me just how that was going to go and what that was going to look like. And in those moments, I mean, you'll understand, but those listening that may not, like, you'd be surprised at what revelation and how crystal clear things can get when you just get quiet and you get still and you're receptive to the leading of the Holy Spirit. And so I just started trying to be obedient. I wrote down some things. I was reading a lot, and I just started trying to walk it out where I felt I was being led. And that just kept coming to me, man. And then Last in Line came to me. And I guess, I don't know if it was a defining moment. There was a defining season of, okay, now it's time to pick up your tools, pick up your sword, pick up your, your cross, whatever you want to call it, and start doing something. Go make a difference. Like, leave evidence that you were a believer, but you were on fire to serve and lead and empower people and equip people and encourage people. Like, leave evidence of that. And so I think that's when the light went on. Like, bro, until this point, other than my wife and kids, like, really, what is there? And so, man, I just started writing and doing the podcast, which I had no clue for like the first, some might even say I still don't, but like for the first like year, I can say it was probably bumpy, and I probably don't want to listen to those, but just kept ironing out the kinks, man, and just kept going, keep my head down. And I always felt like God was just still saying, yeah, this is it. You're right in your lane, dude. This is, just keep doing. So that's what it was, man.
Yeah. No, I love that, man. The act of doing, right? Just because you just started moving in a direction, and maybe you didn't have clarity of the entire picture or the entire purpose, right? But you knew this is where you need to be, and this is where you need to go, and you just start moving. And I think there's a lot to be said there, man, because, and I know you've dealt with this. How many people have told you, hey, I want to start a podcast, or I want to start a
Yeah.
business. I want to start this. I want to start that. And they tell
Mhm.
you that, and you're absolutely, dude, do it. Like, yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Go for it, man. You need some help? I'll show you what equipment
Right.
you need to get. What this and that.
Right.
And then time passes, and what happens? They don't do it. They don't take that first step. And like you said, you started sort of messy in a sense, and you may not have all
Mhm.
these things dialed in, but and that's same with me, man. I started putting videos on YouTube, and I was like throwing spaghetti on the wall. I was like,
Yeah.
well, what? I want to help these guys with all these different aspects of their life. So I'm just gonna start throwing stuff out there and see what hits.
Right.
And yeah, man, I can't go
Exactly.
back. I think the other day I was looking through some of my old videos, and I was like, oh, this is cringy stuff here, man. This is bad, but they're still up there, like I
Yeah,
can't fight
yeah.
it. Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
I'm with
And
you. It's a
yeah,
learning process. Like it's trial and error, and
yes, sir.
um, I still believe though that in the scriptures, and I can't remember the exact verse, but where he's talking about, I think it's Old Testament, where he's like, you're preparing your fields for rain, basically. Like
Mhm.
you can pray for rain all day, but the guy that prepares his fields to receive that is the one that's going to get the rain. And I feel like even though it was messy and sloppy and rough
Yeah,
around the edges, like I feel like God can work with that. And so I was
yes,
trying to
sir.
give God something to work with, I guess is the easy way to put it. And the results are up to him anyway. So I just head down, go. And yeah, you gotta think outside the box. You gotta get creative. You can't just monotonously, if that's a word, do things just for the sake of checking a box. But you got
Mhm.
to put your heart into it. You got to try to find new ways of doing things and reach out to people and get around good people to help. But ultimately, like he's gonna bring the rain and he's gonna create the harvest, and the fruit is gonna be plentiful and abundant because of him, not because of me. And so that's why
Yeah.
I felt like I needed to give him something to work with.
Yeah. What do you think in regards to purpose, right? Because you'll hear, and I've said this even in my own life, right? Like, my family is my world. They're my purpose. They're my life. They're what I live for. And as I've kind of grown in this space, and even with Apogee and all these things, when I was going through issues in my marriage with my wife and all that, the issues happened when I put her on a pedestal, right?
Mm-hmm.
When I made her the center of my world and made her the
Mm-hmm.
purpose. And that's when I had the most issues, and we had the most issues in our marriage. But the second that something happened and I switched, right, where now I was on a purpose similar to what you described, where I started growing something like this. I started getting on my own personal self-development, my own faith, my own growth with God and all that. And that shifted. Now she wasn't this pedestal, this thing that I was putting above, almost like an idol, really, right? Like I'm
Right,
putting her
right.
above God and all these things. And now she was coming along, man, and she's like, hey, I want to go with you on this mission. I want to go with you on
Mm-hmm.
this purpose. And it's a very different dynamic seeing that difference. And I'm curious to see with you, being a family man, you had all these things dialed in as a provider, and you were doing what's required of you, right? But there was still something knocking at you where like, hey, it's not to say that this isn't enough, but there's something more, right? So I'd like you to speak to that, man. Like, how do you feel about that in terms of developing your purpose rather than finding it, right? Or making a person your purpose or your
Mm.
family your purpose?
Yeah, I'm glad you said that because
Yeah.
couldn't agree more.
Mhm.
We will never live up to that. If your spouse makes you that, or vice versa, or you make your
Yeah.
kids any creation, like if you're not
Yes,
making the
sir.
creator your idol, making the creation is going to let you down every time. So and it could be money, it could be whatever, it could be fame, status. So purpose is really, I mean, how well can I be obedient to what God has laid out as his standard? Nope,
Yeah.
never going to be perfect. Never, he doesn't expect it. Doesn't that's why we have grace. If we were expected to be perfect, we wouldn't need grace. So be as close to obedient as I can on those things. And then yeah, make myself capable enough,
Mhm.
do the thing I need to do to create the knowledge and wisdom, the ability physically to protect and provide, and and the heart really and the character to love and lead and serve the way that God asked me to do as a steward over my family. But that's what I'm doing. I'm stewarding that. I'm not worshiping them. I'm
Yeah.
stewarding them, and they're part, like you said it perfect. They're part of the process. They're part of the mission. But dude, I'm stewarding and serving them. I'm not worshiping them. And if we get that out of whack and we turn that upside down, that hierarchy, just like I tell my kids, my wife's above them. Like, don't ever
Mm.
make me pick, between the two of you, because I pick her every time. Same with her and God. Like, she would never ask me to choose her over God and vice versa. So let's not
Yeah.
do that in the way we look at our life and our purpose and our mission. Let's not say, oh, well, as long as I'm doing what makes her happy. Yeah, you don't want to make her unhappy, but like, that's not your mission. That's not your sole reason for being
Yeah.
here. But you do have to steward and serve those people.
Yeah. No, I love that, man. I'm 100% with you. And yeah, I'm living proof, brother, that is the thing. Because and when that locks into your mind and you're on your purpose and you know that you're sort of directionally correct and you
Mm.
understand that this is a path that God has laid out for you, and you may not see the whole picture, but man, like all the people around you, your family, your wife, like they gravitate towards that because they see a man that has clarity, at least to what he was made to do, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And it's just a beautiful thing.
I want to add to that too, because something just hit me as you were
Yes, sir.
talking.
Yeah.
It so it's a vicious cycle. So if you do that, for people listening that
Mm,
might be doing that and maybe they don't even know they're doing it, but
mm,
you will constantly harbor some sort of resentment, because in your mind your expectations aren't going to be met always, right? If you're doing that, if you're idolizing that person or that job, right? Or that person
mm,
on Instagram, or your children, if you're doing that, you're going to not be carrying yourself and fulfilling what you're supposed to do to the fullest, because you're
yeah.
always going to have that little thorn in your side, that little agitation, that little bitterness, that little resentment. You're going to carry, I promise you. Because, like you said, I'm living proof too. We're living
Yeah.
proof of, if you slip into that, you can tell. And that's
Yeah.
maybe a good gauge is, I feel a little resentment toward that. I'm a little bitter toward that person because they're not really meeting my needs. Well, guess what? Because you're making them the idol. You know what? And and
Mm.
and those are ways of setting yourself up for failure, and then you're setting your relationship up for failure. So I wanted to add that because you hit on something huge there, and I'm glad you said that.
Yes, sir. No, man. Like, yeah, it's a big thing, man. And I think, and what I see a lot right now is, a lot of us, and this was me too. We're operating on this kind of lone wolf mentality
Mm,
where we sort of want to figure everything out on our own. And to me, I used to think that if I didn't figure it out on my own, I was like less of a man. You know what I mean? Like if I needed to reach out to somebody like yourself or somebody like Matt for any type of advice or help, or to plug into a brotherhood like I've done with Apogee, like that was a sign of weakness or a sign of like, man,
mm-hmm,
like I'm being too vulnerable, right? Like
mm-hmm.
I can't be looking for that. I need to figure this out on my own, because it's just, at the end of the day, it's just me and my family, right?
Yeah,
That's the way I would think about it. And man, it's such a wrong way, I think, and I've learned that, of thinking, man, because you need fellowship, you need brothers, you need people, men in particular for us, that we can sort of look to, that maybe are a few chapters ahead of us in this family leadership game that God has ordained us to play, right?
yeah,
And man, and without that, I don't think that we could do it successfully. And one of the things that I like to say is that the lone wolf will never lead the pack, right? Because
mm,
you think the lone wolf, like they're never going to get a chance to lead the pack. They're always just going to be out and about, right? And so, can you speak to that in terms of you yourself and how maybe you felt? I don't know if you felt that way during the time where you were just all in on the family game, and before you found Last in Line, or found it Last in Line. Was there anything like that going on for you? Did you plug yourself into a brotherhood of men, or whether in a church or outside of a church?
yeah. I did, and I guess I had ups or ebbs and flows of that.
Okay.
I had seasons where I was really like sold out, pouring in, serving at church, leading groups, teaching at men's classes and things. And I've always been kind of bad at like doing stuff with friends outside of church or work. Like I've been, I've had 4 kids, and kids have been in sports year round for like 10 years. And so it's just been hard. And so your acquaintances become those that your kids basically at their activities, right? And so you sort of develop those, but they're not the tight, ride or die
Yeah.
guys that you're talking about. I do have a handful of those just over the years I've kept in contact. And I will say, even if I'm not having dinner with those guys once a week, or we're not going, even if I'm not going to shoot with them or hunt,
Yeah.
I don't hunt, but if we were going to go shoot or whatever, like, you don't necessarily have to do those things are cool, but if you're checking in with them and you're asking, hey, what can I pray for you about? Or, hey, what's going on with you, dude? Like, how's it going? Give them a call. If you're doing that, I think you still maintain that connection and that
Yeah.
I can call them at 3 in the morning type of friendship.
Yes, sir.
Um, I've been bad at being intentional of like getting 5 or 6 guys and us going away for a weekend and just like
Mm.
eating beef jerky and shooting stuff. Like I've been bad
Yeah.
at that. But
Yeah.
I don't know that I have to be that great at that to have those type of relationships. Um, I will say I've never really been a lone. I don't know if I've been a lone wolf, where I
Mm.
think I just I control it, my own destiny. I control everything. I'll just go do my thing, and I'll just I got all this, and it's on me. And I don't really feel like that. Um, I will say there's value in a tight brotherhood of guys. I could be better probably at solidifying a bigger number of those guys. And I think the trap with guys is that we feel like we got to have 10 or 20, right? That we're
Yeah.
constantly doing things with, or we failed in the friendship department. Uh, I mean, if
Yeah.
you've got 3 or 4, I think you're living high on the hog. Like I think
Oh,
you're
for sure.
lavish in those types of relationships if you got that many. But times are different too. Like my dad had a bunch of those, like all his life, because they all grew up in the same town. They all lived in the same town, raised a family in the same town. Like it's different, right? I don't
Yeah.
live in the same town I grew up in, and rarely do people do that anymore. But I don't know. That probably didn't answer your question, but I could be better.
Yeah. No, no, I appreciate that. Yeah, it's one thing I've seen with Apogee, right? Because this sort of virtual aspect of forming a brotherhood online, right,
Mm-hmm.
is maybe it's not a new concept, but it is something that I do believe in now in terms of it being valid, right, and useful for any men that come into the space or that are looking for that, because you can find all these guys from like right now just through Apogee, man. Like I at least know 1 or 2 guys in almost every state now. You know what I mean? Like I
Nice.
have a contact there, and a brother, like somebody that I've gone through
Yeah.
sort of a gauntlet with a 12-month program that we just did. And I came in as one of the class 1 guys, man. We were like the guinea pigs when Matt and Tim first started this whole thing. So
Mm-hmm.
there wasn't a whole lot set up in terms of what we were going to do and challenges. There was a roadmap and we had to follow it, but a lot of it was a learning process and a lot of getting uncomfortable, right? And reaching out to fellow men. And yeah, I mean, I'll be honest with you, brother, like even reaching out to yourself, for this podcast interview for me, like a year ago, that would have been
Mm-hmm.
tough for me. It would
Okay.
have been hard for me to like, to I don't want to say muster up the courage, but just have
Yeah.
the confidence, I guess you can say, to reach out. And even if I was rejected or anything like that, like I would
Mm-hmm.
still be, I'd still be good. Like, and I
Yeah.
think
Yeah.
there's a certain level of growth that's occurred in me because of this brotherhood. And even though it's been in a virtual sense, like it's still super impactful, super powerful that we can stay connected, even though being so geographically apart, right? So
Yeah.
yeah, man,
That's
it's
awesome.
definitely a lot of validity there. What I wanted to go with is you mentioned church men's groups, right? And this is
Mm-hmm.
something that I've struggled with as well. Is what do you see that is missing in, not in all churches, of course, and I don't want to generalize here, but in many churches today, the men's group in a church, it seems like there's a sort of a veil that gets put over it where we don't dive into some of the deeper topics, right? Like marital, like intimacy, for example, lack of intimacy, or um, maybe pornography, addictions that are hard, that plague a lot of men in our generation and in this time, right? You just we tend to stay away from these taboo topics just to keep kind of the religious sort of facade, if you will, within the context of the church, and we don't dive into those topics. And I feel like that's made a lot of men, even like myself, look for men's groups outside of the church, right? To sort of be real and have those real conversations without any fear of judgment, or, what do you think is going on there? And do you think we can change that dynamic, within the church?
I mean, it's a good question. I've probably even asked that question a bunch of times on my podcast to guess. Man, I will say part of the reason I did step away from some of that leadership was what you're saying. And I don't think it's anybody's really fault in leadership at church. I think they've got kind of some, I don't know if you want to call them guardrails or boundaries they try to stay within from a corporate worship perspective and a corporate, setting like that. What I feel like churches could be better at is what you just said at the end. I think they could encourage maybe guys getting together at home. Not that they're discouraging it, but I think it would be cool if they could maybe make an extension of whatever curriculum they want to cover. And I know part of your question is why are we not covering the curriculum that are sort of polarizing topics? I don't know if I can answer that. Now, what I will say is, I think we're more catering to a female population, I feel like, because I think the stats, the data backs me up, and I believe that it's weighted more, church attendance is weighted more toward women than men as a whole. I think so. In order to keep that machine rolling, I think we're trying to accommodate that more than really diving into intentionally creating platforms and curriculum and avenues for guys. I think we have a guy group just so we can, the churches can say we have a guy group of the 100 groups we offer. There's a men's group. Okay, great. But you're getting the same 10 guys, and they fluctuate, right? And they will come or they won't come sometimes. I personally, and there's churches doing it right, I'm sure. Just my experience, I think you should encourage men to meet outside the building from a church direction standpoint. Now, if it's my church, I'm saying it from the pulpit. I don't know that all churches feel comfortable with pastors saying, hey, guys, men, you need to start meeting more. Here's a group that meets here on this day. Here's a group that meets here on this day. Like, I think we could be better at that. Maybe some do that. I don't know. But from what you're telling me, you and I both agree that maybe our churches aren't doing as intentional of a job as they could be in that. And of course, you and I have the answers that fix all the world's problems, right? So we know everything, right? But no, I believe that there's something about, and we used to do that. We used to have like maybe a breakfast where guys would show up. And it would be, we'd pray together, and maybe we'd go over a book in the Bible or something like that. And I think guys are doing that sort of one off. I think it could just be done on a bigger scale and have the support of church leadership to a higher degree, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think it's also like the level of fellowship that you have, I guess, or the conversations that are had, right, with those moments. Because I remember, even growing up with a lot of the guys that I grew up with that I've known for decades, right? Like at this point. And we have conversations and we can have a good time and all that, but rarely do we have conversations about like checking in on like, hey man, how's your marriage? I mean, how's everything with you and your wife going? How's your relationship with your kids? Any challenges you're facing? Anything, thing I could support you with or anything like that? Like, we don't have those kind of conversations. It's more like, what was the game, or this movie or whatever it was, right? It's these sort of frivolous topics that we cover just on the surface level. We don't get any deeper with any of these things. And where I feel that something like Apogee or something what you're doing or what I'm doing, there's already sort of a mission and something, a core value that's kind of guiding that conversation, that's the place or the environment where we have these types of conversations. You know what I mean? Yeah. In a church setting, I think like you said, there's a certain kind of stigma or something that is placed on it, where if you go to a church, men's retreat or something like that, it's like, yeah, you're going to read some verses, you're going to get prayer, you're going to get this and that, but are you going to get deeper than that, right? Is there going to be actionable things that they're going to have you do, that are moving forward? And what happens after the retreat, right? After the 3 day,
Right.
like, yeah, rah rah, like fest, like we're back, we're pumped, we got the fire, but how do we keep that fire engaged throughout the rest of the year, the rest of the time? And you're right, like, I don't have all the answers, but absolutely not. And I like having these conversations, because I feel like it stimulates at least ideas and solutions that we can kind of, maybe come up with. So
Yeah. Um, so I kind of laid a little bit of the blame on churches, right? And so
mm,
I also want to go back to, guys have to want it bad enough. You know what I
mm,
mean? Like, I feel
yes, sir.
like sometimes we wait to be fed, and then we gripe
Mm,
about the food that we're getting. Like, we sometimes won't go pursue what we need, and actually, in your to your point, the sin or the lifestyle that maybe needs addressed, I
mm,
don't know that we hate it enough in our own minds sometimes to want to kill it. And if you want to
yeah.
kill it, then you're going to pursue it, and you're going to pursue guys to do that with, I think. So on the other side of that same coin, I think guys can be a little bit more intentional and hungry to kill some of those dark areas that
Yeah.
are weighing them down, if that makes any sense.
No, it makes perfect sense in this, in this culture that we live in now, with like instant gratification, right? And we get everything fast. It's a very comfortable life that we live in. And when guys don't, like, when that level of comfort is not painful, right? Like, they don't see 10 years down the road what that could do maybe to a family, when you're just living in that comfort. um it's hard to wake them up, man. It's hard to get anybody to, we've had this conversation in Apogee, asking this question as to what does it take to wake up a man, like to wake him up to want to change, to wake him up to want to be different and be a better man, husband, father. And with a lot of the mentors that we've had come up, man, and they'll say that you have to hit like this rock bottom moment, right?
Yeah.
Like some sort of, you got to be put up against the wall, and and that's the moment that it's either like do or die. Like, you have to change, or it's just going to end and it's all going to come, crashing down.
Yeah.
And I'm stubborn in my resolve sometimes. So I try to figure out, well, like, do we all have to hit rock bottom, or is there a way that we can wake these guys up before that rock bottom moment, before this and that? And one of the guys that I had come on, his name's Cody Chapman. He said something that's really stuck with me. And I'd be curious to hear what your take is on it. That another aspect of that, or another solution to that, to waking a man up, is not only the rock bottom moment, but what he said is exposure to a hero figure, right? Exposure to a man that may be living a life differently than you, that you might want to aspire to be like, right? Where you
Mm-hmm.
see somebody come in and you're like, wow, like, I didn't know. Like, you see a strong marriage,
Mm-hmm.
right? A very powerful bonded couple. You see a strong bond between a father and son, a father and daughter.
Yeah.
And when you witness those things, that person or that man usually kind of becomes this sort of hero figure in your mind, and someone that you can maybe emulate or learn from. And he said that exposure to that and getting proximity to that type of man can also be another aspect of waking these men up, right? And I'd be curious to see what your take is on that, and if you have any other alternative solutions that you've run into, that we could, share
Yeah.
with the listeners.
Yep. Yep. Um, I like that about, finding that, I don't know if you call it a sage, or you find
Mhm.
that guy who's done it right long enough, and he's
Yes,
a
sir.
little longer in the tooth, right? Everybody needs a Paul, like Timothy had Paul, right?
Yeah.
Joshua and Moses. Like, I think you need that relationship. Not everybody's blessed enough to have that available. Even if it's virtual, I think it's worthwhile.
Yeah.
Um, that's definitely something that I have, I mean, I have kind of one, but he's not like 75 and I'm 51. He's only a few years older than me, but still, I think he's been a
Mm,
believer quite a bit longer than me. So I think that's what we need to measure, the gauge, the age, if you want to say spiritual age.
yeah,
So I think somebody that's done it right, not that they're perfect, I think that's one way for sure. But like you said, the rock bottom moment. I feel like that's hard to sustain. Yes, you're awake because you had to be. Then what
yeah,
happens when things are good, right? Like, do you go
mm,
back and take for granted and fall asleep spiritually again and get complacent? And then you have
yeah,
to wait again till that dumpster fire moment. And then it's all a process again. So it's this vicious, perpetual cycle. I don't know that that's sustainable. I mean, I think it works.
yeah,
Unfortunately, a lot of people get hurt, right? I think there's some collateral damage in that process and with that methodology. But yeah, it works. Now, my take is again back to the dude, you're a man and you have to understand. We talked about it at the beginning. Understand your mission, like protect, provide, be capable to be a producer, right? To serve and lead. Like if you realize the seriousness of that role, man, the guy, that's got the watch overnight, he's because he's going to die if he falls asleep. Like he doesn't have to really be motivated to stay awake. Like he's got a mission. Like don't let people die. And so, in my mind, don't I don't want myself to die spiritually, and I'm accountable for other people. I'm stewarding,
yeah,
like I said earlier, I'm responsible for other people. So, you know, shame on me if I need to be awakened. Like, I hate to, because, yeah, we
yeah,
go through ups and downs, but if we got guys that are waiting for someone to wake them up, we got a bigger problem than I thought.
mm,
So I think we got to be able to own that responsibility. Like I said, we got to know
yeah,
what it is. We got to own it, and we got to take it seriously and think, okay, this has eternal implications. And if I don't take it seriously, who will? And then what's going to happen if I don't? So I mean, we got a lot of children trapped in men's bodies if they need that explained to them. Now, yes, maybe they need somebody to kind of slap them around and be like, "Hey, remember this? This is your mission. Like this is worthwhile." Oh, okay, yeah, yeah. I needed that. Yeah.
yeah,
So I'm not saying that I'm perfect, but bro, we got to have dudes that don't need somebody to wake them up every 6 months. You
yeah.
understand?
Oh no,
So
yeah, I'm with you. I'm with you 100%. And I love what you said about the rock bottom not being sustainable because you know what it takes me to when you were saying that is growing up in church. I'd see a lot of people come in and they give their life to
yep,
God, Christ, and all that, and then
on fire.
even bro, literally on fire and doing the whole thing right, full force ahead, and then you see them just it's not sustainable. They leave the church or they or even like I'll even say like with my cousin who actually was the one that invited me to church at 13, and I think he left the faith, and he was the one that brought me into the fold and changed. I mean, literally his invitation changed my entire life, like changed the course of my entire life. So that, and I'm still here, as a believer. I'm still doing, I'm not doing the church thing. I'll be honest with you. It's been a while since I've been to an actual church because
Sure,
of
sure.
a lot of things that have happened, but I am still very much a believer and I'm still very much, God centered in my approach with how I lead my family and all that. And I gather with believers and men within Apogee that are believers and, they
Yeah.
keep me accountable and all that. But, um, with that being said, I've seen that trajectory of that rock bottom moment not being sustainable.
Hmm.
Right. And I love the way you put that because it just took me back there, man. I'm seeing images of people that I've known, men that have come into my life as mentors, right. As father
Hmm.
figures, and spiritual guides, if you will. And they've deviated from the path as time has gone on. Right. And you would think that they would have it more together, not have to have that repeat awakening,
Yeah.
if you will.
Yeah.
Yeah, man, it's a sad thing, and I'm with you there. Like we need to just be able to sustain that. And, and man, it's such a crazy conversation because of the level of distractions and the culture we live in, where, it's so easy to just be asleep, the entire time.
And that's why what you said is having that maybe more seasoned person that can see that in you, that you've given permission to call you out and up, really.
Yes, sir.
Then that's sort of a both and answer. Like, I think you need all of that. And so that person can see when you may be dozing off spiritually.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Love this. I love this conversation. I want to switch gears a little bit. I want to talk a little bit about the book Operation 333.
Yes, sir.
How that came about. How can we as family leaders be able to utilize that to our advantage? Moving forward and using that as a tool. Because I love giving our listeners tools and things that they can utilize. To be able to be more effective in this role that we've been privileged with.
Yeah. So it came from. It's about spiritual warfare, and it's about how to engage in the battle and understanding that there's an enemy and knowing what he's about and what he's trying to do, and then knowing what God's already equipped us with and that we've already won. Right, the war we've won, but the battle you can lose every day if you don't get in the fight. And so it was a tool for me that I was going through a little bit of a season where I was kind of in a I don't know. I felt like I was being attacked spiritually. Like, I just kind of felt like it was me against the world, right? Even my family, I kind of felt on edge and defensive, and just it was just a cloud over me. I mean, I wasn't doing anything crazy, like sinful. I wasn't falling away from faith. I was still in the morning reading like I always do. In fact, that's where it sort of hit me that, okay, this is what this is. Like, I acknowledge this is a spiritual war happening. These thoughts are not coming from God. They're not coming from anybody else but the enemy, who for some reason thought that he would, try to kick down my door. And I did let him for a few times. And then I realized what was happening. So I started writing down like what I'm thinking and feeling. And those are not truth. Those are lies. And so then I started thinking, okay, how can guys, because I know I'm not the only one dealing with this, how can we have something practical that not only outlines who the devil is and what he's about, what he's trying to accomplish, something beyond just the Bible, because Scripture is very thorough in explaining all that. But I wanted something maybe tactical, simple for guys that can sort of be like a roadmap or a guidebook on how to fight. And so that's what I did. I created Operation 333, and the 333 is the practical application, quick, like 3 minutes. That's one of the three. So in 3 minutes, write three things that you feel like you've been attacked with in the last, 3 weeks, 3 months, 3 days, whatever, just another three, right? So it was 333. And so you just write those down. And it's like, okay, I feel like my wife doesn't respect me. Okay, I feel like I'm never going to get this promotion. I feel like I'm stuck in this pit or whatever physically. I can't lose this 10 pounds. So those are lies, right? So I'm writing those down, and then obviously search Scripture for things that counteract that, the truth, and then start speaking what God says about it. And there's a part in the book where I think I call it like, it's during the weapons. So I break it down into different sections, and then the last one is weapons and kind of what God's given us. And so I have it where you can, let's think it's read it, write it, and then recite it. I think I call it speak it, but I should have done recite. After I published it, I realized it would have been nice to have another little R in there, but speak it. So if I'm going to, so I'm reading it, so I'm reading the Word of God, then I want to write down some of the things that are some of my artillery on how to fight, and then speak it. So read, write it, speak it. And so those were tangible, practical kind of ways of engaging in a battle that you can't see. Because some guys are like, well, I mean, this devil, okay, yeah, pitchfork, red leotard, whatever. He's, he likes sitting around in the fire and screwing with people. I mean, that's not it. So they don't engage because they can't see him, obviously, and they don't really know. I think it freaks people out to say, oh, well, there's a spiritual realm that's happening beyond what I can see, and that's causing me to think these things and feel these things and then ultimately act out. I don't think people want to believe that can exist, but I mean, scriptures say it can, so I believe that.
Yeah, no, that's super helpful, man, because you know, we like you were saying, we think about the devil and we think that he's like this, red dude with like, the horns and the pitchfork and all that, fire and brimstone and all that stuff. And but no, man, like he comes at you with like 95% truth, and it's that 5% lie that he makes you focus on, or the way he twists things and the way he manipulates the world around you to attack, and it could be something as a traumatic event that happened to us in our childhood, or a negative label that somebody put on us that has become a false belief, like you were saying, these false lies, right? These false belief about our own capabilities or what we're, whether we're worthy of a mission or not. Like just that doubt in and of itself can be an enemy, and that we run with and let us just, and we let ourselves get beat by it day in and day out. So having a tool like this is powerful. And it's funny because what I've come to find was a lot of even this false belief, right? Of saying like, I don't like to write, right? I don't like to read. I don't like to write, like just accepting that as true. When writing and using a tool, just like you described, is the way we organize our thoughts, is the way that we kind of get the chaos that goes on in our minds as men. And we sort of put order to that, right? And it gives us the ability to kind of, like you said, read it, write it, right, and speak it, and gain direction, gain clarity. Sort of a critical thinking type of exercise, right?
Sure.
Not a lot of us engage in, man, all the time. So I love it, man. I love that's a tool that you developed for yourself, and then also that you're sharing that with others, and being able to, absolutely, man. So let's talk about last in line leadership. So you start this mission, you start the podcast. What are some of the lessons, man, that you've learned from being in this for? I mean, if I'm remembering correctly, you said you were like on episode 340 or something like that, 300 something.
It's approaching mid threes, I guess. Yeah.
Wow.
This is my fourth
That's amazing.
season doing it, and man, I don't know. So lessons I would say are, just again back to sometimes the voices don't want you to keep doing what you're doing, right? So the more you serve God, the bigger target you have on your back, of course, and believers know this. But I've had just kind of these things come up in in the 4 years where I'm like, well, I mean, is anybody really going to care if I stop? Or I might miss an episode this week, and who's really going to know? I mean, it's not like I have this huge following, and so I'm like, But then I catch myself, right? And I've thought of hanging it up, and just being done. Like those thoughts have gone in my head too. And I think anybody that does a podcast would be lying if they said they've never thought about that. But I don't know what causes those, but the lesson I would get from that is just, again, understand what's not true, what's not real, what's a lie that's trying to like get me off my game, get me off my purpose and mission, and identify it, and then just be like, no, not doing it. And sometimes it's just been stubbornness that I've like, no, I'm doing this. Like I'm going. I don't care if I'm the only person that listens to it. I'm just going to do it. And so that's a big one. And never be afraid to reach out to somebody. Like that's one lesson is like, nobody's too big. Yes, I tailor my expectations based on who I'm reaching out to. Like it's not like I'm holding my breath on certain people that I ask. Because I'm like, okay, whatever. But there have been some that have come back that I'm like, wow, I can't believe they're going to actually come on my podcast. And so never be afraid, because you never know. And
Yeah.
never disqualify yourself, because look, they may have accomplished a lot of things, but look, we're all going to the same place, hopefully, at the end, right? And
Yes, sir.
we're all putting our pants on the same. So worst thing that can happen is that they just can't do it, or won't do it, or don't even respond. That's the worst.
Yeah.
That's the worst case scenario. So that would be a lesson for life, probably.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And that grit of continuing, you know what I mean? Even because I'm with you. I'm right there with you, man. Like there's been, especially, early on, like I don't have a huge listenership as well. And there's been moments where I've questioned, like, is it worth it to keep going? Is it like, who would even know, right? If I stop, who would even care if I stop? And you're right, it's these self-doubts that enter into your mind where they're trying to give you the easy way out. It's almost like, because it's harder to keep going despite
Yeah,
it. And if you look at any of these, online entrepreneur guys that we've seen that are in the space, and um, we may look at them and we may think that they were this overnight success, right?
yeah, yeah.
But it took them years. It took them time to get to where they're at. They needed to earn their stripes. They needed to. I mean, I heard, if familiar with Alex Hormozy,
Mm-mm.
he's come on as a as a mentor for us in Apogee, and he's blown up this year for sure with like his subscribership and his podcast and all that. But he had a podcast where I think before he even blew up, he was like on episode 430 or something like that. So you're about 100 episodes away, my friend. Like, you know what I mean? From
Yeah.
that. And, and before he even took off and became this guy that he, like, super successful guy that he is now. So it takes work, man. It takes so much work and that dedication, to keep going, even when it's hard, even when you post something and like there's crickets,
Oh
and
yeah.
nobody's, yeah. And I'm sure that's happened. That's happened to
Oh yeah.
me. And yeah. And, I think the enemy comes in when we're looking at those things and playing that comparison game of like, man, like, I'm never going to be like this guy, or I'm never going to be as big as this dude. And,
Yep.
but it's not that, man. I think that somebody shared a perspective with me this week. I think I forgot who it was. I can't remember the name, but they said something to the effect of, if you're putting limitations on yourself, if you're sort of, yeah, if you're putting limitations on yourself, and those limitations that you're putting on yourself are keeping you from speaking your message to someone, from changing someone's life out there, because
Mm-hmm.
even if our episodes don't get thousands and,
Yeah.
on thousands of views, there might be one guy, just one guy, that
Mm-hmm.
listens to it and his life changes drastically because of one thing that you said, one word, one phrase that you uttered that might have sparked something, might have changed something, a perspective shift, a paradigm shift. And all of a sudden that changes the trajectory of that person's life. You planted a seed and you just never know, man. And just for that one guy, it's worth it,
I was going to
and
say, as
yeah,
you're talking, I was going to say sowing and reaping. Like, I think sowing
yes,
seeds
sir.
is what we're doing, and we don't always get to see where God waters and where God's harvest is at. Like, we don't ever always get to see the fruit from it, right? That's not our job. Like, it's not our right, really. We don't necessarily deserve to see that always. So I think, yeah, if we look at it as we're just sowing and scattering as much seed as we can, I mean, eventually, there's gonna be a harvest from it somewhere. Even if we don't see it.
Yes, sir. Yeah, no. Um, yeah, man, it's a mission for sure. And
Yeah.
we gotta keep it going. All right, brother, I want to be respectful of your time. I want to hit you with, the, pretty much the final question I always hit my guests with, which is, if you had to narrow it down to just a few traits, in your opinion, what makes a dad a good family leader?
Oh man, so much, so much. Man, a dad, a family leader, I mean, they have to have the right foundation first
Mhm.
spiritually. Like, I don't care who's listening. You can be really good at a lot of things, but if you're not leading your family spiritually, you're missing that one key component. I would say second one is you gotta lead by example, and that is cliche, but that's if you expect them to be serving others, then you've got to serve them, and you've got to take initiative if you expect them to take initiative. Like if you want your kids to be in the world and be kind individuals to people and speak help and encouragement to people, you can't be talking to your wife like a piece of trash. Like you've got to emulate what you want your kids to be. And so I don't know, that's I think it's knowing the foundation and leading with the spiritual foundation, then serving by doing the things you expect from other people. And maybe the last one would be just let them know that you've always got their back. Like you're never turning your back on them. Like this is
Mm.
always going to be a safe place for all of you. Like if your family knows that, yeah, there may be some hard conversations. Yeah, we have boundaries. Yeah, you're accountable. And yeah, I'm going to call you out when you disrespect or disregard those boundaries. But we have standards we live by here. And so that's what I think you have to establish those standards, but then you also have to let them know, look, we got unconditional love all over this place. And this is safe for you to come back to. And the Bible talks about God disciplines the children that he loves. So, yeah, dad may come down on you about something, right? Dad may hold you to the fire on something, you not keeping your word or disrespecting your mother. But at the end of the day, look, nothing's going to make me not love you. And I'm never going to turn my back on you. And this is always going to be your spot to come when the world has turned on you. This will always be a refuge for you. I think that's huge.
Yeah. No, I love that, brother. Yeah. Setting the foundation, spiritual foundation, right? Leading by example, having standards, right? And providing that safe haven for them, and
Yeah.
understanding that they're safe under your care as long as they're in your,
Yeah.
your charge, if you will,
Yeah.
and under your leadership, your protection, and you're that person, you're that rock for them. So
Yeah, let me
yeah, I love
encourage
it.
your
I love
guys.
it.
Let me encourage your guys with one thing too, because the lead by
Yes, sir.
example is that's a broad brush, okay? And that
Yeah.
covers a lot of things. But I will encourage you guys, like one of the things I do is I try to lead by example from a fitness standpoint. I'm not a
Mm.
runner, I'm not a crazed lunatic CrossFitter guy. I don't do jujitsu, which I wish I'd have come across it years ago. But I lift a lot of weight a lot of the
Mm.
time. And I try to make that an example. My kids know, like they know what I do out in the garage. They can tell dad can pick up some stuff, right, and move it. And he can do that a bunch of times. But to the listeners, I will encourage you just because you're leading by example doesn't always mean that they're like following exactly how you want them to follow in certain things, right?
Yeah.
So I mean, I'm still, some of my kids don't do the fitness thing that I want them to do, but I'm not pushing that on them. But I am leading because I've heard it said like sometimes it takes a season or two or a bunch of seasons before that comes back to you. Like I'm
Yeah.
doing what I want to do to set a standard in my life. They may not be doing it now, but 5 years from now, like they're going to remember dad was in the weight room. Dad was taking care of his body. And
Yeah.
maybe I need to, as they become protectors and providers, they need to start being physically capable. So I didn't want to leave that part out. That was under my umbrella of lead by example. There's a ton of things under that. But the part that I want people to know is they may not always follow you in every step of everything
Yeah.
you do. Right. And so just know that they might come back to that at some point if you keep doing what you're doing consistently.
Yeah. I think that example plants a seed, like we were talking about, right? And like I said, like you said, we may not see that seed germinate for quite some time, right? Like God's going to water that and grow that, and we can't force it. Because I think when we do force it, that's when it becomes something that they hate, something that they despise, and that's something I don't want to.
And that's hard. Like that's hard for me. Like I want to be like, you are going to the gym 3 days a week. Like I want to force that on them, but I have to catch myself because I don't want them ultimately resenting it, and then they remember me as that guy 20 years from now. So you know what? Eventually, they got to get to a place where they're like, I'm tired of being flabby or weak, or I'm tired of being scrawny or whatever it is. I'm going to need to do some stuff physically someday. I better figure this out.
Yeah. Do you think that going back to the setting standards aspect of leadership, right? Would setting, and this is just me asking the question because I'm curious to see what you think about it, is if we set the standard as that is what we do, like in your case as Shibleys or us as Vidals, like where we set the standard, like, hey, we operate on, like, we're healthy, we try to eat healthy, we try to make working out a priority, self-defense a priority, those kinds of things, and that's a standard that we hold as a family. Do you think that helps our cause with leading our children down that path of health and fitness and those kinds of things?
Yeah, I mean, I think it would have been great to do that early on, like earlier. I mean, it's never too late, but like, I mean, I've got 25, 22, and they played sports. I got a 17, almost 18, and a daughter that's turning 16 tomorrow. But like, they've all played sports, so it's not like we've been a bunch of just video game couch potatoes. But maybe I could have probably done better at making that just a part of the regimen, part of the routine. Like, today's Monday, and just like brushing my teeth, today's leg day. Like, I probably could have been better at being a little more stern earlier in life. I took my kids to the weight room as they became junior high and they were doing sports, and I'm like, you gotta be capable. Like, if you want to play sports, you gotta get in the weight room. And so we did that. And then I think they, after high school or whatever, they kind of burn out. And I think we're just in a season of, I live, breathe, eat baseball and weight room for 5 years or whatever. I think I'm taking a break. Maybe we're there, but I agree with you. If you set that early, then it just becomes a way of life.
Yeah. No, I love that, brother. Yeah. Brother, I appreciate you so much, man. I appreciate you making the time and coming on here. I'm going to record a separate outro for you where I'm going to link up all the content, everything, the book, right? Your Instagram page, everything, all the contact info. Is there anything else that you'd like to share in terms of where we can reach you, how we can support you, aside from like IG or anything like that?
Yeah, Instagram for sure.
Okay.
If you type in Last in Line, I think you'll find it. And it's last_in_leader. You don't have to type it that way, but that's what it'll be. And for those of you believers out there, like those of you that are maybe dabbling in reading some devotionals, go to YouVersion, the Bible app. I've got 8 published devotionals on there under Last in Line Leadership, or I think you can search my name too, Shibley, last name. But IG is where I'm really am most of the time. So man, shoot me an email or shoot me a DM or whatever. But I appreciate it, man. I'm on YouTube, on Apple Podcasts, Spotify. So there you go.
Awesome.
You'll get tired of me quickly if you go to those places.
No, I doubt it, brother. I appreciate you, man. Thank you so much.
I enjoyed it.
Thank you for checking out my conversation with John Shibley. If you got value from this, all I ask is that you share it with another family man in your circle. Please go check out the Last in Line Leadership podcast. I've linked up all of John's contact info in the show notes below. All right, my fellow Alpha Dad, I'll catch you on the next one.
1, 2, 3 actions I didn't meet. 4, 5, 6 fear and silence begin to mix. 7, 8, 9 the thought of being emotionless started taking over my mind.